All right. First rule of this channel, we not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So this is going to be week 5, how the sausage was made. There was a lot of teams trying to lose football games today, and a lot of them succeeded on that one. Just got home and I was looking at this. The Cowboys and Steelers game is not quite over. Last time I looked at it. So when that one finishes off, I'll get into it. But again, that one started a little bit late because of the weather stoppage that was going on with that one. So Jamar Chase, he looks like right now going into the Monday night game that he's going to be the week 5 fantasy MVP. Him and Joe Burrow combined for, Joe Burrow threw 5 touchdowns in this one, and Jamar Chase did 10 for 193 and 2 tugs to go along with it in this one. So some of the other guys that are notable this week, we already talked about like Kirk Cousins on Thursday night throwing for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson, like pretty much like cost me my week in my main money league, going off for 4 touchdowns in that one. Joe Flacco pops up again. This is going to get a little interesting when it comes to the Colts offense in this one. Kyler Murray, this game, like I had to go do my normal Sunday stuff, and it looked like the 49ers were cruising, and then I come back and I was like, oh, the Cardinals came back and they won. Bo Nix, again, we talk about this, like guys with nimbly bimbly are going to be there going on. Daniel Jones, I didn't even know he had this good of a day. The Giants ended up beating the Seahawks. We're going to have some conversations about Tank Bigsby tomorrow on Chasing the Dragons. I can tell you that much. I did say this, like when you're right. Like as a coach, starting means you only get one play. And Ramondre Stevenson, he comes in the second play of the game. He goes off of that. Rico Dowdle pops up, running back 5 right now. It was a down week for running backs in general. Trey Sermon does get it done, running back 9. I did bench him, and it was ugly. Not a lot of efficiency, but when you're going to be the guy that goes 6 for 6 in the passing game, and then falls in the end zone, you're going to have that week in general. And another thing to talk about is going to be Chase Brown, and Zach Moss going into next week. Drake London Thursday night, Darnell Mooney Thursday night. Like hopefully you didn't listen to me and you rolled out your DJ Moore shares. T Higgins 14 targets in this one. We'll talk a little bit about Garrett Wilson here in a second. Darius Slayton, 8 for 11, 122 and a touchdown this one. There's Alec Pierce popping up again, 3 for 3 for 134 touchdown. When you're running wind sprints and they land, it's a good week. Brian Thomas, the flop did happen a little bit today when we get into that. Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman, we'll still talk about those 2 guys here in a second. And this one, Tucker Kraft, 4 for 5 for 88, 2 touchdowns, 67-yarder. Brock Bowers, like opening drive, he hit like a 57-yarder for a touchdown in this one. That was pretty interesting. Then the 2 Ravens tight ends not named Mark Andrews, 3 for 3 for 13 and 2 touchdowns for Isaiah Likely. Charlie Kohler, the blocking tight end, 3 for 4 for 64 touchdowns. I think one of them was like a 56-yarder in that one to go along with it. And then defenses and kickers, Houston's kicker, Kyle McLaughlin. These are not entirely surprising sometimes, like good offenses. Mediocre offenses in the right script can do it. The Minnesota kicker, I didn't even see this so far. He does 3 for 3 in this one on the field goals, 2 from 50 yards. That explains that one a little bit. And then defense, Giants against Seattle, had no idea until I clicked on the box scores right now that they had that good a game against Seattle. Minnesota, and again, like if you're holding the Minnesota defense, they can roll against anybody on any given week. That's just how they're generally designed. The other one, Broncos against the Raiders, that was a little bit predictive. I did roll out my Bears shares against the Panthers. That was predictive. Again, Steelers are probably predictive. And this one, Commanders rolling against Cleveland. Yeah, Deshaun Watson, that's going to do it for you. Green Bay is going to be one of the better defenses. So some of this stuff, a lot of this stuff is predictive. We'll talk about Dontavian Wicks also here in a second. As the Cowboys and Steelers game winds down, it looks like the Cowboys are down by 4. So it's actually probably going to finish off as I get this done here today. Jets and Vikings, and this was over in London to start off with. I will just say that I did see that Garrett Wilson's 13 for 22 targets, 101 yards, and 1 touchdown is the lowest efficiency day for anybody that had 22 targets. Just so you understand what was going on with that. Aaron Rodgers got bounced around like a piñata. I got up and saw the end of this game that was going on. And again, just because of how the Minnesota Vikings defense is designed, they're going to blitz you and they're going to stop the run. And that's what happened again. Now, my co-manager, because I do have Brees, talking to him, it doesn't matter sometimes from the matchup. I was hoping that they would get him involved in the passing game. and just say like, hey, we're not going to try and force it. And that's exactly what Aaron Rodgers did. He threw like the game clinching interception late in the game to get done with. Like Sam Darnold comes back to earth a little bit, but again, this would have been a matchup if I had Sam Darnold as my starting quarterback. I would have been benching him, going a different direction, trying to catch some of these things. The other news on this one that I haven't heard anything about, Aaron Jones did leave with a hip. So right now we would be talking about Ty Chandler being like one of the top waiver wire ads and chasing the dragon overall in this one, and not too much more interesting going on in this one from a fantasy perspective. Panthers and Bears, and this is another interesting thing. So like, hopefully you didn't listen to me. You rolled out your Caleb Williams and the rest of your Bears. Like, again, this is tough from a fantasy football perspective. If you can't predict it ahead of time, like I don't know how I would be rolling them out there sometimes. So yeah, I can get away with it sometimes in certain compositions with like my running back 2s or my wide receiver 2s or my flexes wide receiver 3, something along those lines. But like, there's going to be a lot of weeks that like just don't matter from a fantasy football perspective because not enough people are going to be rolling them out there. I don't know how many people would have been rolling out Caleb Williams. I could definitely see rolling Deshaun Watts or DeAndre Swift doing 21 for 73 and a touchdown. He also contributed with 2 for 47 in a passing game. The other interesting thing on this one is Roschon. He's the goal line back. Remember, coach speak doesn't matter with Khalil Herbert. Roschon Johnson punches 2 in from like the like 1 yard line. I believe it was. I was looking at this ahead of time. 1 yard rushing touchdown, and then Roschon late another 1 yarder. The other thing that makes this really interesting is DeAndre Swift does punch 1 in from 1 yard too. Like again, this is crazy. And again, like not being able to predict any of this. You bought DJ Moore to be a fringe wide receiver 1, like high end wide receiver 2. He gets it done this week. He has 2 receiving touchdowns. So again, last week he gets a receiving touchdown, gets that 40-degree day for you. And then in this one, like again, when you can't predict where these guys are going to be based off of like the script overall, like I wouldn't have guessed like 20 for 29, 304 and 2 touchdowns for Caleb Williams, and then it's going to go to DJ Moore. Rome, still not going to be part of that. Like again, I don't know how predictive any of this is going to be going forward, other than to say like the Panthers are not particularly good, so you could probably take advantage of them. Chuba's still an RB1, 13 for 97 and a touchdown, and that's to go along with another 4 targets in the passing game. Jonathan Mingo, he out produced right now, and I haven't seen any of the stats, the advanced stats on this one. He out produces Xavier Leggett. Tommy Tremble, I saw the replay on this. He got knocked out of the game. 1 for 7 on 2 targets, and he had a fumble lost in this one because he got like literally knocked out on the field. It was kind of vicious in that one. Jalen Coker leads everybody. I don't even know who he is off the top of my head. And then Deontay Johnson does 6 targets in this one. So again, Bears are good defense. So that's why I probably would have been benching most of my Panthers if I can get away with it, outside of like Deontay Johnson and Chuba. I mean, they're ones. So, I mean, they should be matchup proof, right? It looks like Deontay Johnson is not going forward. And then, again, I don't know how to deal with the Bears. Bryce Young gets in the game late to go along with this one. It's just, one of those things is like difficult to predict in general. So, Ravens and Bengals, and this one's all over the place. Bengals were up by 10 in the 4th quarter, and then they're like, hey, I don't want to win this game. And then they actually had the football. Ravens fumbled in overtime. The Bengals couldn't move the football, missed the 58-yard field goal, and then Derrick Henry just rips off like a 51-yarder, and then the Ravens kick the go-ahead field goal. Like again, Joe Burrow coming out saying like they're not a championship level club right now, and I would agree. Like when you're up like 10 points, like late in the 4th quarter, you should be able to figure out a way to win the game. Lamar Jackson 4 passing touchdowns in this one, and that's to go along with like 12 for 55 on the ground. Like Derrick Henry, 15 for 92 and a touchdown. And I can also talk about this one because I was watching this game script going on. So the passing touchdowns for Lamar Jackson: 1 yard passing touchdown to Isaiah Likely, a 6-yard passing touchdown to Isaiah Likely. Charlie Kohler does a 2-yard passing touchdown from Lamar Jackson to go along with it. And the reason why I bring this up is like your Derrick Henry week, and I'll bring this one up here when we look at running backs. Derrick Henry was really close to having like 3 more rushing touchdowns in this game. But the Ravens decided to throw short passing touchdowns to go along this one. So again, still tracking to be like fantasy MVP, I guess, this year for Derrick Henry to go along with it. And then Zay Flowers, 12 targets, again, like predictive, because expecting that there's going to be a certain amount of game flow that's going to demand that the Ravens actually have to throw the football. So Zay Flowers does 12 for 7 for 111 in this game. That's predictive. And then Rashad Bateman, 8 targets, 4 for 8, and gets that touchdown. So again, which guy would you want more in this offense if we can try and predict how it goes? Like Mark Andrews, 5 for 4 for 55, to go along with this. The other thing is, Jamar Chase, we are talking about him, 12 for 10 for 193 and 2 touchdowns. T. Higgins, 14 targets, 2 touchdowns in this one to go along with 9 for 83. And then Zach Moss, 3 for 28. Chase Brown, 3 for 3 for 8 and a receiving touchdown. But more importantly, in the rushing game, 12 for 46 for him. So like versus Zach Moss's 9 for 24. So again, trying to figure out like what the snap share is, how they're being used. I did see, I think on Saturday, that like Zach Moss is the pass blocker. He's the guy that they're putting up to pick up the blitzes. So he's the brick wall. They're not going to do that with Chase Brown. Chase Brown's not like, I wouldn't necessarily go as far as say Chase Brown's a bad pass blocker, because there just isn't enough of a sample size to kind of see what he would do. And again, like Zach Moss will just throw his body in the way. So like, why would you do that? But at this point, that usage flop has apparently shifted, and it just becomes an issue of like how much we can trust these guys. And again, from a fantasy perspective, can you trust either of these guys? Like maybe Chase Brown, that desperation RB2 or that flex range. Like I might have won my week if I had rolled out Chase Brown and flex. I don't trust him. I don't blame you if you didn't roll him out either to go along with this one. Cowboys did score in this one, so I'll look this up real quick to finish this game off. Bring up the game cast for everybody if you're wondering. So Jalen Tolbert, and we'll talk about Jalen Tolbert because he's going to jump up on Chasing the Dragon. So with Brandon Cook's news on Friday that like they IR'd him, and this would jump Jalen Tolbert in a good offense up to wide receiver 3 range. So he's going to be that dart through runs. I don't know how consistent this is because overall, those wide receiver 3s tracking where the opportunity distribution is going to be. Like we still see that Jake Ferguson had 7 targets. He's the number 2 in the office. CeeDee Lamb had 9 because he's the number 1. And then you're going to have those spike weeks from those guys that are on the field. So Jalen Tolbert's going to be there. It just becomes an issue of like how deep your league is and how much you want to be chasing a guy. Like, I mean, there's going to be Alec Pierce's on your waiver wire. So like how much I would be necessarily chasing Jalen Tolbert again, like, what do you need? What are you expecting? Because he's going to be in that probably 6 to 10 target range on a week-to-week basis with a lot of variance to try and guess on when it comes down to that. And the game just went final. Justin Fields, 2 passing touchdowns. This was ugly early, and I have him in my less competitive high school league. So I was watching this, like this was bad for him. And then he's able to salvage the day. It was 6-3 at halftime. And not only was it 6-3 at halftime, there was an hour and a half delay for weather before the game even started up in this one. So again, like Justin Fields, I talk about this, trying to chase these guys. This looked like it was going to be that 6-3 game, going in the second half, and then combined 14 or 28 total points in the second half. All your touchdowns come in the second half. Justin Fields does 2 passing touchdowns. Najee, the bell cow, I don't even know who the rest of the backs are with Cordell Patterson and Jalen Warren being out. He does 14 for 42 and another 2 for 35 in the game. I did see that George Pickens was getting outsnapped by Van Jefferson and Calvin Austin in this game. So that's something else to be paying attention to when we look at that stuff down the line. Hunter Lupke still involved, but Rico Dowdle, 20 carries for 87. So yeah, I don't even know about Dalvin Cook being a thing at this point. It just looks like they have decided that Rico Dowdle is their back at this point. So like, I wouldn't necessarily go as far as say he's an RB1, but we can start speculating that that's what his value is going to be going forward in this one. And then I think that's about it for this game that I have to say on that. Had to mute myself so I could cough real quick. Dolphins and Patriots. So this is the one I already talked about. Like, they started Antonio Gibson. They moved Ramondre right in. He does 12 for 89. Does get the rushing touchdown. Trying to track that Jalen Polk breakout. He did have the 6 targets. Pop Douglas does the 9 less efficient targets. So again, like tracking what's going on with this one. Again, Jacoby Brissett is not going to be the guy that if you want to be rolling out Jalen Polk. I would have been rolling out deeper leagues Jalen Polk. Probably about 14-man leagues. I would have been thinking about rolling out Jalen Polk when it comes to that wide receiver 3s or flex type position when it comes down to that in general. And then over for the Dolphins, Devin Achane gets knocked out, and Raheem Mostert was the guy getting most of the carries. And then Jalen Wright, we're going to have a discussion on this one because I imagine Devon Achane will probably sit out this week. And then Jalen Wright, we're going to end up talking about like what's it going to be worth. I don't imagine if Raheem Mostert is healthy that they're going to go the whole boat to Jalen Wright, and I wouldn't also expect that I'm going to want pieces of bad offenses with limited red zone opportunities. Tyreek Hill, 9 targets, 9 for 6 for 69. Jalen Waddle, 8 for 4 for 46. Odell Beckham, first game of the season, 2 targets, nothing else to go along with it in this one. And I mean, an ugly game that you can kind of expect that it was going to go the direction that it was going to go. Browns and Commanders. This one was worse than it looked like because, as you can see, it was 24-3 at halftime. And then in the third quarter, because again, I was watching my Jalen Daniels, I have him in my main money league, and then I'm rolling him in my high school league. So you're looking at 34-6 at the end of the third in this game overall. Hopefully, you guys hear that car. My street is the track meet for everybody. And this one, and then they already came out and they said Deshaun Watson is going to remain the starting quarterback for this one. I also saw that Deonta Foreman was out carrying Jerome Ford. So a lot of this work for Jerome Ford does appear to have come later in the game. Don't have a lot else to say about the Browns in this one, other than like I wouldn't be trusting any of those guys. When it comes to the Redskins, Brian Robinson, not very efficient, but he falls in the end zone twice. So again, like that's all you really want. Scary carry of 8 for 4 for 112, almost got in, fell on the 1 yard line in this one to go along with it. So again, if you're Jaden Daniels could have had a better day. It's just again, Brian Robinson punched it in from like the 1 yard line twice in this game. I believe it was from the 1 yard line. So again, like Derrick Henry could have had a better week. Jaden Daniels could have had a better week. And at this point, like, I'm not saying the Browns defense was the Brown defense of old, but at this point, like, some of these guys are going to be matchup proof at this point. Brian Robinson Jr., B-Rob does 4-yard rushing touchdown and a 1-yard rushing touchdown on this one. So like you could have had a slightly better Jaden Daniels week when it comes down to this. And it was a ridiculous blowout. Jaguars and Colts. And again, speaking of teams trying to not win your football game. So it is 10-13 at halftime. Most of the damage that Brian Thomas did was in the first half. And I did see that they were tracking his speed, and it's ridiculous. Something we already know. 85-yard touchdown to go along with this. Michael Pittman, rolling him out there. He scores on a 1-yard touchdown, not very efficient. Then you have your Alec Pierce, Joe Flacco throwing it up there. Josh Downs, 12 for 9 for 69. And to the guy that was asking about, like, should you roll Garrett Wilson or should you roll Josh Downs? And I was like, I wouldn't be rolling out, Josh Downs unless Joe Flacco was a starting quarterback. And again, trying to guess a certain amount of predictability. I would have imagined that like Josh Downs would have had a more predictive day with Joe Flacco than you could predict that Garrett Wilson was going to get 22 targets with how the Jets offensive look. Jets offense still didn't look good, even though Garrett Wilson did the 22. So again, like Josh Downs, 12 targets. I will normally take that because Josh Downs is a little bit more of a vertical type guy, that he's not like a gadget slot guy to go after this. Alec Pierce in this one, and you're looking at, let's see, 65-yard touchdown pass in the fourth quarter. As you can see in the fourth quarter, you're looking at 41 combined points between these guys as they were just hucking it up down the line. Tank Bigsby, he rips off like I think it was like a 57-yarder late in the game, or 65-yarder late in the game. Let me see, 65-yarder late in the game. 13 for 102 or 101 and 2 touchdowns to go along with this one. He also had a 28-yarder in the passing game. Yeah, I can imagine at this point, like whatever's going on, and I have seen on Twitter that like Travis Etienne is one of the speculative trade candidates that are going to be going on out there. I don't know. And at this point with like Etienne and Bigsby, I don't know if you're going to be able to trust Bigsby because it is going to be a running back by committee. And if I had to choose between the two of them, it would be Bigsby at this point. A lot of Christian Kirk's damage came in the second half when like I said, Brian Thomas basically like disappeared after he did like 5 for 122 and a touchdown. They didn't keep going back to him later in the game. It became Christian Kirk. And then Brenton Strange, if you roll him out as a streamer because Evan Ingram was out, he did tug in this one. 4 for 4 for 24. That was one of the biggest things with Brenton Strange from last year, this year. And I'll put a big caveat on this. Brenton Strange was a red zone target last year going in this year. That's why I thought it would be interesting if they flop those. Now, in the last preseason game, they did use Evan Ingram as a red zone target. So like that kind of changed my mind on that one overall when it comes down to this. And then as you can see, Jaguars are able to kick a field goal late to win the game as Joe Flacco like just hucks it up in the air to get it done. Jaguars were cruising in this one early, or cruising, as you can see, like it would have been like 20-10 at one point, and then all the festivities happened. And this one, I can actually go back because I was kind of watching the ticker. As you can see, like Mo Alley clocks to start the fourth quarter, so that they cut it to 3. Brenton Strange, puts them back to 10. Matt Gay kicks a field goal. It's 27-20 for the Jaguars. Tank Bigsby rips off that 65-yarder. It's 34-20 with 5:09 left in the game. If you can't close out a game when you're going on defense with 5:09, this is all coaching. This is all the Jaguars are just really badly coached at this point. This is an organizational issue. Trey Sermon's able to punch one in, and you have 40 seconds that have gone off the clock because you suck at life, and able to cut it to 7 points. Then you still can't close the game out. You give the football back, and Alec Pierce does a dagger for 65-yarder, and then you have to kick a field goal with 17 seconds left to go in the game. That's ridiculous. Game management. And there's a whole bunch of this. This is part of the reason why I just don't watch football anymore, because I just can't understand how there's this level of incompetence that's going on from a professional level. This is the competency crisis that's going across everything right now. I shouldn't get into politics, but anyway, Bills and Texans, and this is another one. The Texans are cruising for most of this game. You can see it's 17-3 at halftime. Bills are able to add 14 points in the fourth quarter or the third quarter to make it close again. Nico goes out with a hamstring. He scored on his 67-yarder, I think, in this one. 67-yarder. He goes out with a hamstring. Stephon Diggs is able to do that. If you rolled out your Cam Akers shares, he's able to tug on limited amount of opportunities. Dare is the guy, 15 for 30. They get a good idea who they trust. And then Dare also did 7 targets, 6 for 5 for 57 in this one. If you rolled out Cam Akers, I understand he was able to get there with that tug, but Dare is the guy that they like more. So that's why I said I generally the stats would say that that's this direction that they would go in overall. And then depending on what's going on with Nico and his hamstring, this would maybe move Stephon Diggs up in there. We start maybe talking about him being the number one in this offense. I don't know if I would trust that he's going to be definitely the guy going forward. I could see it turning into some type of distribution of opportunities going on. And the other thing I saw on Twitter with Josh Allen, I mean, he was bad, 9 for 30, 131 and a touchdown. Touchdown did come on this 49-yarder to Keon Coleman on a 4th and 5 later in the game. And then you had guys not turning around. I think Keon Coleman got hit in the helmet. You had drop passes on this one. You had Josh Allen airmailing the football. And with all of this, and I was watching this on the ticker, with all of this, the game is tied with about a minute left to go in the game. Buffalo has the ball deep in their own territory. And instead of burning the clock and trying to get out of there, they throw 3 straight incompletions. They punt to about midfield, and then CJ Stroud hits a pass late and puts them right into field goal range. And I can bring this up so we can talk about it. Brings them right into field goal range right here. So you can see that with 3 plays, 0 yards, 25 seconds goes off the clock. So they give the football back to the Texans with 10 seconds left to go in the game. CJ Stroud hits Dare for about 5 yards because that's all they needed at that point after the punt. And they kick the go-ahead field goal. This is just horrible coaching. You can't give the football back to Houston with time on the clock. The moment I saw this on the ticker, and I can go back to this, the moment I saw Josh Allen throw an incompletion on first down, I'm like, what are you doing? Are you not trying to win the football game? You have to run the clock so Houston has 3 timeouts so they can burn the timeouts. Because if you leave Houston 1 timeout left and they hit 1 pass because of your field position, they can come on the field and they can kick the game-winning field goal. You have to burn your clock so they don't have the field goals to kick or they don't have the timeouts to kick the field goal. This is ridiculous. And you either have to have a quarterback that understands the strategy of the game, or you have to have a coach that'll do it for him at that. I was just incredulous watching the ticker going are the Bills actually going to try and lose the football game? And they were. James Conner, 20 for 82 and a touchdown to go along with this one. Not necessarily using the passing game, 3 for 2 for 17 to go along with that. If you're in that type of thing. Oh yeah, and the last thing, Dalton Kincaid, and I'm gonna watch the targets on this one if I can find the stats on it. He was, he is still the number one in this offense, especially with Khalil Shakur out. 6 targets for him, and I'm wondering now when I was watching the ticker because I do have him. I am wondering if these were just like not catchable footballs versus like other stuff that was going on in the game. Be interesting at this point. Like I said, with like Dalton Kincaid, like hopefully you pivoted off of him towards other guys that could win you a league. Otherwise, like you are going to get a push at the investment that you put in on him. That's why I am tracking him. Raiders and Broncos, like hopefully you went out and you spent on less capital when it came to your Brock Bowers. 8 for 97, 1 touchdown, 57-yarder. This was like on the opening drive of the game. This basically just killed my chance to win in my main money league. 57-yarder to start the game off. Puts the Raiders up on this one. Gardner Minshew does get benched. I'm considering whether or not I'm going to change the avatar off that one. Aiden O'Connell comes in the game late. Amir Abdullah, like he was leading the team in rushing early in the game. The Raiders have absolutely no idea what they're doing in general. So Alexander Madison does end up finishing like leading the team in rushing. When I talk about like Amir Abdullah early in the game, he had more rush attempts than Alexander Madison did earlier on in the game, and he does get a rushing touchdown. And I'm kind of curious now, like 3-yard rushing touchdown with like 4 minutes left to go in the game. So like he was in the game early. Amir Abdullah was like they have no idea what they're doing. I didn't see if Dylan Labe was even active in this game to be talking about that one in general. 9 targets for Jacoby Myers to go along with like Brock Bowers, 12 for 8 for 97. Trey Tucker getting a little bit of a disappointment when it comes to this one. And then I don't have too much to say about the Broncos because, they were playing a really bad football team. Bo Nix does 2 passing touchdowns on 19 for 27, 206. And he is also able to fall in the end zone. And then Javonte Williams is the leading receiver on 6 targets, 5 for 50 to go along with 13 for 61 in this one. And then the passing touchdowns, one went to Jaleel McLaughlin. And I'm going to guess like right now it's a red zone target, especially, because 3 for 3 in this one. So they don't trust Javonte Williams in the goal line, it looks like. And then Josh Reynolds was the other one. I did see a highlight of, where is he at? Troy Franklin dropping a touchdown pass in this one to go along with all that other stuff that was going on. Cardinals and 49ers. And like I said, this was one that it looked like. So Kyler Murray rips off a 50-yarder early in the game to start the scoring off. As you can see in the first quarter, 2 plays in, he rips off a 50-yarder. And then the 49ers, they jump out and they're in cruise control. At halftime, it is 23-10. Arizona is able to score a field goal in the third quarter. So the 49ers field goal kicker, Jake Moody, he gets knocked out with a high ankle sprain. So they're using their punter as a place kicker in this one, from what I was seeing. I'm looking down here. So they're using their punter as a place kicker. And so even if the 49ers would have gotten in position late to either ice the game or kick a field goal, like they didn't have a field goal kicker. Now I bring this up because Jordan Mason fumbles late in the game, and that's where the Arizona Cardinals are able to drive back down and kick the go-ahead field goal, scoring 11 fourth quarter points to take again, bad coaching. I don't know. You're up late. All you got to do is do the right calls. And this is the same type of poor management by the 49ers that cost them the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Going back to like listening to some of the pundits talk about like the Chiefs, like this is the same playbook that the New England Patriots had with Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. Like they don't have to be better than you. All they have to do is wait for you to do something stupid and lose the football game. Like this is just a ridiculous week in general. So James Conner, and I did see this. This is really surprising to me. Like early in the game, James Conner was like at 2.9, or not early in the game. Later in the game, James Conner was at like 2.9 points. So a lot of this like 86 yards came later in the game for James Conner on this one. They did shut him out. Michael Wilson, like 6 targets, 5 for 78. Like I'm going to guess like he had more air yards in this one. Marvin Harrison, 7 for 2 for 36 to go along with Trey McBride back 9 for 6 for 53 to go along with this. Over on the 49ers side. So Brandon Ayuk, finally, he's like hung over. 12 targets, 8 for 147. George Kittle with those ribs, 12 for 8 for 64 and a touchdown. Debo, like not existent to go along with this overall. And then there's Isaac Garriendo again. probably the cuff. I think we could probably safe to say if he's the cuff with Jordan Mason right now, if you're in deep enough leagues to do that. I did see someplace on Twitter that like Christian McCaffrey, maybe they're tracking for like week 7 or week 8. But again, I'm going to guess that they're going to wait until after the bye, depending on how they're doing. This has nothing to do with Christian McCaffrey. This has everything to do with like your coach and your team is just not winning, putting games away. Now, Rams and Packers, again, teams trying to lose football games. So Jordan Love does his best like Will Levis impression and just like hooks the football up in the red or in the end zone, and the Rams intercept it and score a touchdown. And this one, so it did look at a certain point like the Rams were going to just pull away because the Green Bay Packers were not particularly good. It was 10-13 at halftime. Kyron Williams did fumble in this game. If you're wondering, he also scored another rushing touchdown to go along with this. Jordan Whittington, I didn't even see this. Jordan Whittington, 10 targets, 7 for 89. He did look like he was going to be a bust this week. So that most of that came later in the game. Tutu Atwell was the guy early on. I did see that overall. Blake Corum sliding. Didn't even see that. 5 for 25 and another 1 for 8. I am a little curious now if there is an injury problem going on with the Rams. No, nothing on Blake Corum or on Kyron Williams at this point. The only thing I can maybe guess on is at this point, like they are doing something. They're finally going to roll out like their Blake Corums, I guess. The other thing, Tucker Kraft, like he does do a 66-yard touchdown on this one, and then he had another one that was short. I believe he did have 2 touchdown passes. Tucker Kraft 7 yards. As they just put this away, and then the Green Bay Packers were trying to allow the Rams to get back in the game, and they couldn't do it. But the Green Bay Packers, this was bad management to go along with this. Josh Jacobs 19 for 73 and a touchdown in this one, and then Jaden Reed. A lot of this damage was done early in the game. 4 for 78. One of these, and I will tell you flat out. If you could see the highlight of it, Jordan Love just hooks it up to Jaden Reed, and the safety loses tracking of the football, overruns Jaden Reed. So Jordan Love throws in the double coverage, and the safety loses tracking, and then it falls right into Jaden Reed's hand. That was the 53-yard. I have no idea. Now, I did see Dontavian Wicks, like the 7 targets that he had, like he had drops in this one. So again, whatever the logic was there, the guy just couldn't catch the football, I guess, at this rate when it comes down to all that stuff. Let's see. Giants and Seahawks. Let's talk about like other stuff that's like ridiculous. So they leave Eric Gray in the game early. He is the one that he leads to the Seattle Seahawks scoring their first touchdown or their first points of the game. So Eric Gray is in the game early on the 1-yard line. They give it to Eric Gray on 3rd and 1. He doesn't get in. They give it to him again on 4th and 1. He fumbles in the end zone. Rashawn Jenkins picks it up, runs it back for 102 yards. So at this point in the game, then the Eric Gray is like outperforming on Tyrone Tracy because Eric Gray also did 3 for 50. This is all early in the game, by the way. Then they just decide that they're going to actually give the football to Tyrone Tracy in the game. He does 18 for 129. And some of his runs, I did see some of the highlights on Tyrone Tracy. Really good at football when it comes down to it. So Daniel Jones, 23 for 34, 257 and 2 touchdowns. This one, Wan'Dale Robinson, if you rolled him out, he did tug in this one. So not necessarily a great day, but like that wide receiver 2 type, 9 targets for 6 for 36 and a touchdown. Darius Slayton, 11 targets, 8 for 122 and a touchdown. Was not expecting that one at all to go along with this. And then over on the Seattle Seahawks side, was not quite paying as much attention to what was going on until later in the game where I was like, the Giants are going to win this. They did block a field goal and return it. So it was, I can bring this up so we can look at that. The Seattle Seahawks were going to kick the go-ahead field goal late in the game. So as you can see, it's 20, or they were going to tie the game up. It was 23-20. And then at that point, this blocked field goal, with 55 seconds left to go in the game, and that ices it for the Giants. So I was not quite expecting that this game was going to be as close as it was. The other thing that I was paying attention to from a fantasy perspective, at a certain point in the game, Zach Charbonnet was actually outscoring Kenneth Walker because Charbonnet had this 3 for 19 and Kenneth Walker couldn't get anything done. So a lot of the 7 for 57 for Kenneth Walker came, I think, in the second half of the game overall. Tyler Lockett, he does 33 yards like late to salvage the game for him. But like everybody else, like you see DK, I think he had a fumble of this one, lost. And then Jackson Smith with 7 targets. So yeah, like all that stuff going on. Geno Smith 4 for 72. Didn't even see that he did that in this one to go along with 28 for 40, 284 and a touchdown. Again, those guys that have the nimbly bimbly that can get that stuff done. And then Theo Johnson, 5 for 48. That's going to be a little interesting going forward on that one. And then we already talked about the Cowboys and Steelers game that finished off when I was live. And then Saints and Chiefs are going to be tomorrow night. So anyway, that is going to be week 5, how the sausage was made. Right now we're tracking Jamar Chase to be week 5 fantasy MVP. And I'll see you guys Monday with Chasing the Dragon.